Good morning and welcome to the May meeting of the Lextran Board of Directors. Today is May 24th, 2023. My name is Jill Barnett and I'm the General Manager for Lextran. I'm going to turn the meeting over to our Vice Chair, Ms. Jamie Rogers.
So first I'm going to go over roll call. We have our board chair as absent, myself as present, George Ward.
Here.
Lady Borges Gonzalez.
Present.
Judge Thurston. Absent. Mr. Motley.
Present.
Mr. Schoniger.
Here.
All right, we also have Dr. Capo as absent today. All right, then we will go over the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Ward. Do we have a second?
So moved.
A second by Mr.
Second.
We'll do second by Lady Borges Gonzalez. Do I have a motion to approve? Or do I have a vote to approve?
Yes.
Aye. Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Okay, the minutes are approved. Oh, and I skipped over. Do we have any items, public comment for items on the agenda?
Do not think we have any members of the public here today.
All right, so we have no public comment. We'll go back to, we just did the approval of the minutes. Chair's report, I don't know of anything unless you know of something.
Mr. Dow did not share anything with me for a chair's report today.
Okay. And then we are going to, and do I need a motion to move the action items before the monthly performance report, or can I just do that?
You can do that. You do
Okay,
not
so
need a motion.
we have a couple people that may have to leave, so we're going to move up the action items first for the resolution. If we'll go to resolution for IT services.
Sure. If you would, this is located on page 15 of your board packet. Today we have Resolution 2023-07, a resolution to award a contract for IT services. So today we're requesting the board's authorization to award that contract. We issued an RFP back in December with proposals received in February. As always, in that process, a staff evaluation committee reviews for responsiveness, compliance, and ability to do that work. So a proposal was received from 8 firms, 7 qualified and deemed responsive. Those are listed in your resolution. Next Century Technologies is being recommended today for contract award for general IT services. I do want to add that Next Century is a Women's Business Enterprise, WBE, certified by the Commonwealth of Kentucky. Pricing for this contract is based on task order requests as well as an individual hourly rate schedule for general on-call support. So in the event that we have a task order, we will provide them with a scope. They'll provide us back with a price. We'll reach an agreement on that before proceeding. In general, on-call work that is needed, that would be subject to that hourly rate. The term of this contract will be for 3 years with 2 options to award for an additional year for a total maximum of 5 possible years. Our source of funds is federal $5,307 and state match from the Commonwealth of Kentucky. If you have any questions, I would be happy to entertain those.
Do WBEs get points?
You do not receive credit for being a WBE, only in the instance of being a DBE is counted towards federal dollars. But I did want to mention it for the board's information. Oftentimes, someone who is qualified as a WBE or an MBE is likely also qualified for the DBE component. It's just a separate certification.
Okay. In this case, were they, or do you know?
I do not know for sure.
Okay.
But we have advised them that that is a separate certification process and given them that information.
Any questions?
I had one more question on that point. Jill, did you say this was a women-owned business?
It
or
is.
A different designation?
It's a WBE, so a Women's Business Enterprise certified by the Commonwealth of Kentucky.
Did we track I know that we talked about our kind of DBE goals relative to like federal spending and capital
Correct.
dollars.
I'm sorry, I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I know that we track our spending with minority-owned businesses relative to our federal spending. I wanted to check to see if we are tracking that otherwise.
We do track the DBE spend, as you mentioned, as it counts towards our federal program goals and federal spend. We have not historically tracked spending with WBEs or MBEs. but did want to mention that today, as it's been a topic of interest with the board.
And so I know when we went over the budget a couple weeks, months ago now, we talked about some IT services. So I see it comes out of formula funds and state funds, but where is it, what line items that come out of the budget?
Professional services, I think. Is that correct?
In the operating budget is professional services administration, and then in the 5307 funds, it comes out of miscellaneous support.
Okay. There's no other questions, so I have a motion to approve resolution 2023-07.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Schoniger. Do we have a second?
Second.
We have a second by Mr. Ward. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? All right, the resolution passes. We'll move to the second one.
All right. Today's resolution, 2023-08, is a resolution to adopt the fiscal year 2024 meeting schedule for our Board of Directors. Did want to add, I had placed this item in our meeting packet a month sooner than I did last year, just in an effort to get these meetings on people's calendar a little sooner so we didn't overbook. And had discussed this calendar with Mr. Dowell in advance of the packet going out. So this adheres to the same schedule that we're following now, sticking with the fourth Wednesday of the month at 10 a.m. The one time the meeting is not the fourth Wednesday is in the month of November, because that would put us meeting the day before Thanksgiving. And I didn't feel that would be very, very flexible with people's schedules. So that meeting will be on the third Wednesday. There are 2 work sessions noted here to go ahead and get those on folks' calendars in the months of October and April.
What's the October work session usually focus on?
It varies from year to year, and I don't believe we have had one in October for the last 2 years. But wanted to have that placeholder there in the event that we're ramping up for anything related to capital projects or strategic planning.
Okay.
And then the April work session, as this board notes, is generally focused on the budget and financials.
Any questions about the calendar? There are no questions. We have a motion to approve.
So moved.
We have a motion by Mr. Ward. Do we have a second?
So moved.
A second by Mr. Schoniger. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? All right, this motion passes.
All right, thank you, board, and I will get those calendar invites sent to you promptly so we can go ahead and get those meetings on calendars. Did seem to have a bit of a conflict today with an unusual meeting that came up and took a couple of our board members away. But that is all of the action items for this meeting today. If you would like to go back to the agenda.
Yeah, we'll go back to the performance report and financials, and I believe you're going to walk us through those.
I am going to walk you through, a couple months ago I said I was pinch hitting on the performance report in the absence of Mr. Combs. And he said we got through the meeting really quickly, and so he was going to chat me through that again today, unfortunately. I will approach the podium to do that, so if you'll give me just a moment.
And Christian, I also know you have a presentation, so we've gone through all the items that need a vote if you have to drop.
Thank you all.
All right, good morning again. We have our performance report for the month of April. So this is all data related to things that happened last month. Before I get into the highlights and things that we did, I did want to add, yesterday we had our budget presentation at Lexington Fayette Urban County Council. We received a motion to place that on the docket, so that will go, yesterday was a work session, so it will go for full council approval at a later meeting. Went pretty well, had a lot of questions. We have a lot of new council members that I've never presented to before, but have got that process in motion. As this board knows, our mission is we serve people in our community with mobility solutions. We have a number of highlights for things that happened in April. This board, our finance committee, and the full board went through a work session on our budget to get that ready for yesterday's presentation to council. We provided service to the Keeneland Spring Meet. We had several job fairs that we attended, including an expungement fair and a BCTC career fair, a number of photos there from those events. And a number of members of our team also attended the Lexington Safety Action Plan meeting on April 28th, and that is in conjunction with the project that the city is doing. We had some commendations for April for our employees Cece Carter, Talika Harris, and Michael Burnett. Those 3 employees are bus operators. We also received one for Miss Arnisha Davis, a customer service representative. The person who gave the commendation for Miss Davis said that they have a disability and she is always nice anytime they need help, and they ride with Lextran. So always happy to hear some good feedback on our operators and customer service team and our maintenance staff when we get those for going above and beyond. We are continuing to do well on our fixed route system ridership. As you will see, for the month of April, we're a little bit ahead of where our average has been and where we were in the previous year. So we're really doing well in terms of ridership and on track to continue that increase. As I stated, for members of the Finance Committee, and I think I said this to the full board in our work session, obviously we love to see this growth and hope that this continues and we exceed our targets. I do expect that this will level off at some point. It's just hard to tell when that is. In terms of paratransit, we are down a little bit compared to where we might have expected. We are down compared to that monthly average, as well as the previous year. This continues the trend that we have been seeing in recent months, and we are hopeful as we continue to make progress and improvements in our paratransit service delivery that we will stabilize. We have our percent change relative to monthly average. And in terms of April system productivity, just another look and capture of our ridership. We had close to 320,000 trips on fixed route last month. Again, the bulk of that ridership for both fixed and paratransit continues to be on weekdays. We're doing well in terms of trips per mile and trips per hour. In paratransit, the goal for trips per hour is 2. They have exceeded that. I do want to say, and one thing I'm not sure that we've ever talked about really with this board, is that in terms of trips per hour and on-time performance, there's an inverse relationship between those two. So as on-time performance improves, you will likely see this number go down a bit. On the safety side, preventable accidents, we had less than 1 on fixed route per 100,000 miles. Paratransit had 6.35 per 100,000 miles, so had a few more accidents than normal. I think their total last month, John, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was 5.
Sure.
I think they had a total of 5, so that's the raw number. But per 100,000 miles, that comes out to 6.35. Our injury frequency rate, that is the rate of injuries per 200,000 hours worked, 6.2. We had 29 days in fixed with no preventable accidents, 48 days of lost time, and we had 1 workers' comp claim last month. In maintenance, this is kind of more of the same. We had more than 8,000 miles between road calls in April, so that's a little bit down from where our average years year to date, but we did maintain that 100% streak for the completion of preventive maintenance inspections on our vehicles. Before we get into financials, does anyone have any questions on the performance report? I will do my best to answer. Hearing none, I will.
So I have one.
Yes.
So I see we had 1 preventable accident. Paratransit had 5. That seems high.
5 seems high, yes.
Okay. I can see the year-to-date, and the year-to-date last year, the average was 1, and the average year-to-date is 2, but 5 this month.
Mm-hmm.
Is that just something we continue to monitor?
So we're going to continue to monitor. They have started, or I should say have continued a little bit with some of their incumbent drivers, making sure that they folks who did not work for RATP Dev previously may have had different trainings in the past, so they're continuing to make sure that they are up to speed and where they need to be in terms of new hire employees on all the trainings that they have had, as well as accident reporting, that they know that, you need to report everything. So I do want to say, even though they had 5, and we talk about 329-1, you don't want 300 near misses and 29 minor accidents because that's going to lead to 1 major accident. But that 5, it could be a matter of they are reporting things now that previously they did not. I do not know that with 100% certainty, but we want them to report, anything that could count as an incident or an accident. If you damaged a mailbox, there's property damage, so that's still an accident, and that needs to be reported.
And the reason, just so I'm following, the reason the year-to-date is less than the per month is because that's per 100,000 trips. So if you take all the trips they've been doing through 2023, they've had 2.5.
2.53 per
So on
100,000
average
miles.
about, okay.
So in the months where they have had none, that's going to bring that year-to-date number down.
And then I had also on the on-time performance, no significant change. We're staying about at 88, 89%.
On fixed route, yes, we did have a slight decrease on our fixed route service, so that's something that we continue to monitor. One thing that I want to make sure to share is that oftentimes our routes and schedules can be impacted by different road construction projects or traffic. Obviously, traffic is an impact for everyone, but when there is road construction, even if it is for a couple of weeks time period or something like that, we don't adjust our schedules because that would mean we were constantly adjusting our schedules for the public. And so sometimes that has an impact that lasts a little bit longer than might be desired. We do our best to make sure that customers have alerts on our real-time app and on our trip planner on our website that let them know about construction that's happening in certain areas and that there could be impacts.
And then I saw our discourtesies were slightly up this month. Yes, so complaints decreased, however, the total number increased from the previous month. But no real alarm in reading those.
Nothing that comes to mind immediately. I would need to refresh on the detail of those individual complaints to give you a better answer, but nothing alarming that is top of mind right at this moment.
And the last one, the discourtesies on the paratransit, it says this is the lowest in several years with only 11.
Mm-hmm.
So when I read where it says 31, is that because that's a percentage out of the 100,000 trips? Just make sure I'm reading
I'm
these
going in
right.
the wrong direction, and I don't think that I have that chart on here. It's in the board packet. I will need to look at that chart before I give you an answer, Jamie.
So I think because that's 31,000, just
Later early.
That's later early.
I got it.
And again, that I don't know off the top of my head what that raw number is, but again, that's 31.96 per 100,000
Per
trips.
100.
So there's a really good chance that they did not have 31 complaints about later early.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anyone have any others on performance report before she goes on to financials?
Right. We're going to move on to financials. I will ask Ms. Falkenberry, our Director of Finance and HR, to share that with you. I did want to note, I'll say this for the public record, and also the board, I immediately before the board meeting sent out a corrected statement of revenues and expenses, and Nikki will go over that. The dollar figures, the amounts on that were correct. The categories got out of line when we did a copy and paste. But that the number you see here in the categories on screen are correct. This has been corrected. Have sent you a corrected packet as well.
Bless you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Okay, we'll look at the balance sheet for April. It's hard to believe that we are this far into the fiscal year, and it's going to be fiscal year 24 pretty soon. Our operating cash at the end of April is still looking strong. We're right at $29.6 million. We have had some funds, grant funds in April come in, so that number is a little bit higher at this point, but it'll fluctuate between now and the end of June, obviously. Our work in process, that's some of our grant funds, like I said, that we've received in May, but I'll be glad to answer any questions about the balance sheet if you have any. Okay. Statement of revenue and expenses, this is the one that Jill mentioned at the very top for the revenues. We're a little bit out of line on the packet, but this is correct. Property taxes are looking very strong. We've almost reached $22 million at the end of April, which is $1.4 million over budget. So we are very happy about that. Passenger revenue was down for the month of April, but it's still over budget by $142,000. So we continue to monitor that number. Federal funds, that's a combination of our 5307 funds and also some of the COVID relief funding. We have about $4 million left to draw down. We'll draw $2 million of it between now and the end of this fiscal year, and then we'll draw a little over $2 million for the new fiscal year. So that should all be spent out by the end of September is what we're expecting. Other revenue, as we mentioned before, that's UK and fuel taxes, refunds, things like that. Wages and fringe at this point are looking really good. We are still actively hiring. We had a job fair last week and we're still actively hiring, but we are doing pretty good in the area of operators. We do need maintenance staff, so if you know anyone that works in maintenance, please send them our way. Professional services, we have plans between now and the end of June to spend some of that money. As you know, we've talked about before, some of the expenses with contract maintenance for our vehicles has increased. So we plan to spend some of that. Materials and supplies over budget a little bit. That is due to our maintenance parts. We kind of expected that based on what the history we've seen for the last few months. Everything else is looking pretty good. We have a monthly average diesel cost right now of $2.80, which gives us a year-to-date for the fiscal year of $3.48. And just as a reminder, we budgeted $4.25, so we're still very pleased with that number. And our diesel gallon equivalent for the compressed natural gas actually went down. It had been running around $2 for the last 3 months, and it's down to $1.65. So we are happy that we are getting more CNGs, but since that number is lower at this point than diesel. So, but I'll be glad to answer any questions that you have.
And I may have, and maybe it's a moot point at this point, but we have talked about making a budget amendment so that paired transit matches our actual.
We talked about that, but since we did the budget last, when we did the new budget, we did the projections, so we kind of fixed it in the projections. So we didn't do an official, since it was so late in the fiscal year, we didn't do an official budget amendment, but it is reflected in the projections that we did for
In next year's budget, in FY24 budget, that will match, but.
Well, for the FY23, we did a projection, which took the place of the budget amendment. So if you look back at the packet for last month, it will show the projection for FY23.
But we don't have to go back and make an amendment, so the 4.3 million budgeted has to change. It'll just always be that our actual is more than our budgeted.
Yes, and since we are over budget in revenue, we were still on the positive side.
Right.
So that's why we just went ahead and did it in the projection instead of doing an actual formal amendment. If we had been basically in the hole, of course, we would have done one. But since we're over in our revenue, that's why we just did a projection.
It also seemed sort of, to us at least, because this is something that we have talked about and the full board has been aware of, you know, every month and since the budget was put in place, and it wasn't really a total surprise. It became a moot point.
Yeah, we knew last year when we budgeted paratransit that we would go over, but it'll just always reflect that that number will be lower than what we actually spent.
Right, and we expected to do one in December, but at that point in December, it was not as much as we expected it to be at that point, so that then we just went ahead and did the projections when we went through with the next budget.
And then on the federal funds, the $3 million variance there, I'm hearing that's going to be, we're going to see the actual go up.
Yes, yes, that was just an estimate since it's on a reimbursement basis. We did an estimate, and since it's the COVID relief dollars are for operating expenses such as payroll, fringe, things like that, and fuel, that was an estimate. So we will draw down at least $2 more million before the end of the year.
And then I know we talked about this in finance, and we talked about this last month, that we're in a really great position now, and next year, but I think it was 2025 was the year where that variance started to become, we started to dip into our fund balance, and so something just for us to continue to look at and monitor.
Yes.
Any other questions? All right, thank you. All right, that was the performance report and financials. Do we have a change order report?
I do not have a change order report this month.
Do we have any old business?
In terms of old business, I did want to say for the board that Mr. Fred Combs and I met with some representatives of the group Build last week. We had our meeting on, I think it was April 18th. It was originally scheduled for, I'm in the wrong month now, May 18th. We did reschedule that meeting from when I originally told you that we were having it. We had it about a week later, but we did meet with them. And in that process, I explained to them some of the, the budget impacts that we've had in the last year that we haven't seen before, based on the increased cost of paratransit. Also made sure to clarify that a number of folks that they, that they have mentioned with their microtransit service, that those folks are likely eligible for paratransit service as well. Told them that, we were not saying, absolutely not, we're not considering microtransit ever, because microtransit is a consideration in the recent comprehensive operations analysis that we completed. However, I told them that it was our desire right now that we maintain a focus on the provision of paratransit service, work on getting that turned around, because as this board knows, we've struggled with on-time performance and that service delivery, that we really wanted to focus on making improvements to that before we offered something else that couldn't guarantee was sustainable or would also meet the needs of those individuals. So they seem to understand and appreciated that feedback, and we will just continue to keep open dialogue with them.
Do you expect them to come back before the board meeting?
We do not have a future meeting scheduled at this time, but I will keep you apprised of that if that happens. Okay?
And any other old business items?
No other old business items at this time.
I have, and maybe going back to the performance report question, what were the questions that you got yesterday from council? What were they asking you about? You said you got a significant amount.
A significant amount of questions. I received a question about autonomous vehicles. I received a question about our conversations with Build. Received a question about service expansion to the Georgetown Road area and what that would look like. A question regarding how we decide where service goes. A question about the trolley service. A specific question related to some police activity and issues we've been experiencing at one of our bus stops. A question about possible route expansion into the Winburn neighborhood once citation is completed. A question about our balance sheet, if we would provide that to Councilmember Fred Brown. I told him that we would.
Did they give you an indication of when the citation would be completed?
No, I did not receive that. Those are the questions that are coming to mind immediately. I will review the questions with Stephanie and Emily, who helped me take notes. And if there's anything that I've missed, we'll get back to you. But we left that meeting so late yesterday, and preparing for this meeting this morning, that is from my mind. I've not looked at anything on paper, so there's a chance I missed some things.
No, you didn't. That was a lot of items to rattle through. But it sounds like a lot of questions around service, specific locations.
Yeah, service, specific locations, the way in which we make decisions. Only a handful of questions about our actual budget.
But you actually walk through the budget line
Mhm.
items, or you just walk through the total?
Almost the identical presentation that was given to you at Finance Committee and work session. I added a few slides of just general topical information, like Lextran's fleet and Lextran at a glance, for factual information, since there are a number of new council members.
And they understood where our revenue comes from, that it doesn't come from their budget?
I believe so. And that, the specific motion made by Councilmember Ellinger also indicates the way in which that money flows.
Okay, thank you. Sorry to go back to that, but
That's all
since
right.
you were talking about build and our budget, and it reminded me of that.
Let me ask a follow-up on build.
Yes.
I guess we'll just keep an eye to see if we get a lot more applications for paratransit.
Mm-hmm. So we can certainly do that. So as you know, I'll say for the full board, for a person to ride paratransit service, they must go through an eligibility assessment to determine that those individuals qualify, which would mean that they have a disability that would prevent them from using the fixed route. That can be some of the time, that can be all of the time. So it is an individual assessment process.
And their request on microtransit is just on-call all the time for anybody?
They have made specific reference to individuals that have a mental disability of some sort. As a public transit provider, we are unable to do that, to limit microtransit service. We would have to open microtransit service to the public. So it would be available to anyone. Build specific request is on-demand service, door-to-door, which is a specific request. You know, not all microtransit service is door-to-door. There are different flavors, if you will, of microtransit service. Some are curb-to-curb, some are point-to-point, meaning like it's a feeder service into a main line bus route. They have made that request of us. So as I said, a number of those folks are likely eligible for paratransit service. However, one complaint that, or one issue that Build has raised is that is inconvenient because it's not on demand. You have to schedule the trip in advance.
How do you schedule an on-demand trip?
Basically, an on-demand trip is an Uber. It, can come within 15 minutes. However, paratransit you need to schedule the day before.
And in some of the trainings that you've been doing around microtransit, it's a very high cost per person.
Yes.
For those transit organizations that are doing it.
One of the recent, webinars or information sessions that I participated in, that individual locality identified a cost of about $100 per trip. And so in a course of 6 months, they had spent about $1.2 million.
Any other questions? Old business?
No other old business.
Any new business?
I do not have any new business at this time.
Will you discuss our future proposed agenda items?
Sure. So some upcoming resolutions. I had actually mentioned that a couple of those would be this month, or at least one of them. One of them will be a procurement policy update. We held off on that because even though the law changed in the most recent legislative session, that KRS does not take effect until 90 days after the session adjourns. So approving that policy at this time wouldn't change anything for us. So you will get that in a future month. We also have an upcoming update to our drug and alcohol policy. Agencies were notified by the US DOT on May 2nd that they have issued a final rule related to drug and alcohol that will allow agencies to use oral fluid testing for drug tests. And the final rule is effective June 1st. However, as recently as Friday, the United States Department of Health and Human Services has not approved any laboratories for the testing. There must be 2 laboratories approved to do that testing, and none of those have been approved at this time. So even if we change the policy, there is nothing, we can't do oral fluid testing. So we're taking this opportunity to make sure that we're going through our policy and ensuring that we have all the appropriate corrections, that we have also given ourselves an option in the event that oral fluid testing continues to take time before there's a laboratory approved, and made sure that we've spelled out that the choice of whether to do a urine test or an oral fluid test remains with the employer, and that is per the U.S. Department of Transportation. So we are working through that based on the timing that the board packet would have needed to go out. I think we had about 17 or 18 days since we had been notified of that change by USDOT. The drug and alcohol policy is lengthy, but that is something that's coming in the future. Future resolution for a Gillig change order. This is for buses that we already have on order. We have a potential change order to add the driver barrier to those. At the time that we ordered the vehicle, we didn't add the barrier because we had yet to receive the vehicles. I believe that timing is correct. We hadn't received the vehicles with the barrier, so we wanted to make sure that that's something that we want to do. So potential change order there. Some of our capital projects, our canopy as well as our CNG fueling station, have some upcoming resolutions related to those for planning and actual work that needs to happen with generators and electrical loads. And I'm not going to say any more technical things about that before I misspeak on what we're doing. We will have an upcoming presentation at a future meeting in a month or so for the RAMP program. Mr. Motley had asked for that recently. And then we will also have upcoming board officer nominations. So that's a lot that I know about, and potentially some other things that pop up between now and then.
You did say in this capital projects update, we'll get an update on the canopy.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah, we are hoping to add in the board presentation, either on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, a capital projects update, because we do have a number of things happening at once, and want to make sure that we're keeping the board apprised of that.
And then the renovations to the downtown transit center,
Mm-hmm.
will that be in this capital projects update?
Yes. So there's I don't know that we will have a resolution related to our downtown transit center, but we can give you an update on the various things that are happening as well.
Okay. Do we have a closed session?
I do not have a need for a closed session today.
And do we have a motion for adjournment?
We don't have a quorum, so we don't have to adjourn.
Okay, we'll just have to adjourn. No motion.
10:40. All right. Thank you, board. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you.